Hello, everybody. Welcome to our May 7 Zoom event, day before Mother's Day. We're gonna celebrate that just a tiny little bit. I'm Sean Sheehy. I'm the director of the Movable Book Society, and happy to be talking at you from Chicago, Illinois. Paper engineer and your first introducing co-host. Second introducing co-host, Emily Martin. Talk to us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mother's Day weekend Zoom. It's a beautiful day here in Iowa, and I have just finished teaching at the University of Iowa Center for the Book, where we feted our graduates yesterday, and I'm looking forward to a summer of finishing my newest artist book called Madness.
Sweet. Kyra Hicks, Chatmistress, any words from you today?
Just want to say hello, and it's exciting to see everybody's faces. And either whether you're inside or outside, it's lovely to be here with you, and happy Mother's Day to the other mothers on the call. Oh, and I'm from Arlington, Virginia. If you can, in the chat, let us know where you're from.
Yes, please. Throw that in the chat. Let us know where you are. Super useful for us. Because we keep track. We keep track. Looking at our list of housekeeping real quick. All right. I think we're ready to roll. So we're gonna have a couple of initial presentations here today. Then we're gonna have our town hall meeting, and then we are going to have our make and take project. And we're gonna start this morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are, with Heather Doyle, Mayor, who we all met for the first time at the Denver, well, I met for the first time at the Denver conference last fall. Heather pairs innovative book structures with papers, fabrics, and text to produce thought-provoking, layered examinations of femininity, motherhood, and domesticity. A Colorado native, Heather holds a BFA from Metropolitan State College of Denver in visual art and a BA from Loretto Heights College, Regis College in theater education. Heather's award-winning work has been exhibited locally, regionally, and nationally, and can be found in university, museum, and private collections. In addition, Heather teaches bookmaking workshops in Colorado schools. She lives and works in Denver, Colorado, USA. And also, in addition, Heather has recently signed on to become the bookkeeper of the Movable Book Society, which I am very delighted by, and has put me in the organization to our own little fun, soft audit, and it was great. All right, so Heather, it's all you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. It is great to be with you all this morning. And I'm going to start by sharing my screen because I've got a little PowerPoint I'm going to run through with you, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So I'm going to jump over there. Right. Okay, as Sean mentioned, I am an artist book person coming to you from Denver. It was sunny up until 5 minutes ago, and now the sun's gone behind a cloud. So all of my beautiful lighting has disappeared for me, but that's okay. Zoom presentation doesn't require that. So I'm just going to start with a little short series that introduces a little bit of what I do just in a visual way. So I'm just going to let you watch for a minute. All right, that's just a little piece. You can also find that on my website, though it's not a moving version. It's just the still version on my website. So because this is a gathering of the Movable Book Society, I wanted to just illuminate and talk about for a minute what an artist book is. And I'm not talking to an uneducated crowd here, so you're going to have to forgive me my trespass for a minute. Just because movable books and artist books overlap a lot, but they're not necessarily the same thing. And I'm just going to explain a little bit of the world that I live in most of the time so that we're all on the same page to start with. I think an artist book begins as a piece of art, that is primarily what we're after there. But the great thing about artist books is that it is art that you can touch and handle and move. The best parts of everything put into art and books. Books for the reader, and artist books for the reader offer some interesting possibilities. And these are ones that I contrast with what is normally available when you go into Barnes and Noble and pick up a book. What's different about an artist's book? So with an artist's book, the reader gets to have interactive structure, something that you can touch or move or hold or turn around or look at differently. There's often tactile materials involved beyond just the regular paper and binding, again, of a Barnes and Noble style book. Amazing paper that's lovely to feel, paper that's painting that you can touch. The feel of letterpress. I'm probably offending the printing people here, but I just love touching letterpress printed things. Feeling the stitches, whatever objects are attached to the page, something that you can touch. The unique presentation of the text. Normally, Barnes and Noble type books aren't text that wanders around the page, turns corners, overlaps itself, different fonts, different colors. So that's part of what makes an artist book potentially more interesting. And also what I'm calling just the visceral gestalt of it all, the whole thing coming together and you go, ah, I get it. That's what that book is. For myself, the reason I do artist books and the reason I work the way I do, which is pretty non-commercial, I am a slow producer, not only because I have another job, but because the processes that I use are pretty pokey. I do these things because I can put my hands on every single part of them and work individually on every single process and material that I have. Because I'm not looking for mass market appeal, I can have a pretty tight focus and have a very personal take on things. I don't know that what I do would be picked up for commercial press, so I am pleased to do it myself because it's what I care about. And then again, because I'm not looking for mass production, all of my materials, how I handle them and what I come out with at the end can be based in the concept because I'm not having to work through materials that are going to work on mass production machines. I'm not having to process that somebody else does it. I do all of my own work. And the product can be whatever I would like it to be. And you're going to see in a few minutes that that varies a lot for me. So movables and artist books. Again, movables are not necessarily synonymous with artist books, but artist books often have movable parts. I'm going to borrow the definition from Alicia Bailey, who curated the Movable Medley exhibit that was here in Denver during the Movable Book Society conference this past fall. So that a movable is any parts that move beyond the usual turning of a page. And it doesn't necessarily mean pop-ups, although it can include a pop-up, but a movable can be any of those sorts of things. So what I'm going to work on now, oh, I'm going to get to my other slide. I should read my own text here. What movables in artist books allow is several different things. And I find that this is why I am drawn to putting movable parts in my own particular books. It gives the reader some agency in the book. They're not just sitting and passively reading. They are involved in touching and feeling and moving and interacting with the book in a way that I think makes them more invested in reading it. There's things that can be hidden and things that can be revealed, and the delight and the potential of that really draws me. Most, again, our Barnes and Noble example, most of that text is only text with pictures. And if you're a children's book writer, then more pictures. But text can be put in a larger context, not only of image, but of structure and of moving and of meaning. So all of the ways that movables can help make more meaning out of a text. Movables can make many layers that you can interact with, not just many layers you can see, but you actually do things with them. And for me, the last one is key, is that whatever I do as a movable is integral to whatever concept I'm working on. that if I'm going to put movement in it just because it's fun, then I need to rethink why I'm doing it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some of my works that include movable pieces. This first piece is called Riptides. It's a book I did a couple of years ago based on a quilt pattern. If you were at that movable medley show, then you saw that upstairs in the case. It was all laid out, and I'm going to show you the closed up version and then what it looks like when it's a little bit expanded. Front cover of this is based, like I said, on a quilt pattern. It's also based on mother-daughter relationships. And yes, it is Mother's Day weekend, but we also need to acknowledge that mother-daughter relationships are some of the most complicated that there are. And I don't know about you and your mom, but boy, I feel like I will never figure out everything that goes on between my mom and me. So lots of pieces there. This is a book that covers 4 generations of my own family. My great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mom, and me. Each spread here, which is from that front panel that you saw, it's the equivalent of the width of 4 of those panels. Each spread covers one woman and notices how she's a daughter and a mother. So this is my great-grandmother, Sarah Elizabeth, daughter of Bertha Louise and mother of Diane Elizabeth, who is my mom. This is a Turkish map fold. The movables in this particular book are mostly the larger structures of the book opening and closing that create the movables. So this is a Turkish map fold, which then I added 4 of these together in a meander fold kind of structure, which then opens up to be a whole quilt pattern. And a meander fold, if you're familiar, is one that goes like this. So that the connections for this are right here, and then you trace along and it's right here, and it all folds up into that single panel that you saw to start with. Going back here again, you can see that there are layers of text underneath and there are layers of text over the top. You can see a little bit more specifically what that is here. And admittedly, this is my the section of me being a teenager, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. The top sections being the top part of the text being the resistant, I don't like you, get out of here, I don't even want a mom anymore kind of things. But underneath is the, but I don't know what to do without you, mom, even though I'm a resistant teenager. And what I love about this structure and this capacity for moving is that you can see both the over and the under layer and have them in relationship to each other. And you can kind of see underneath, peeking underneath there is that layer underneath and then the layer on the top again. Okay, another piece. This one takes the idea of book and makes it into an installation, which is not something that most people think of as being a book, but I hold my own with regards to this. This installation has pages, good enough for me. It's not bound and it's not in a context that we recognize as a book, but to me, still a book. So this piece was created, again, called I Was Mistaken for a Noun. This piece was created in response to years of really terrible family photographs. You know, the ones where somebody captures you mid-gesture or captures you turning away, or, you know, you have your mouth open and you're chewing or something like that. And my mom didn't really stop to think about asking people to pose for a picture. So my scrapbooks are filled with those kind of pictures. And I thought, you know, I would really like to call something back from that and put the movement back into those static images, which are now my memories, are those terrible pictures. So I wanted to put movement back into images from photographs, but not have the images. I turned it into an installation that includes movement and includes pages and works with parts of speech. Here on the front of this particular little box is was to be. You can see would do back there, looking at different verb tenses. So what happened with this installation was that there are waxed boxes of several different heights here. They all have a verb tense on them. Again, the would be, the would do, shall have been, things like that. They're mounted on little wooden platforms on the floor. And then I'm not sure if you can see, but down there, painted onto the floor are these little stamps that look like photo corners, like those old-fashioned corners that you use to hold photographs in a scrapbook. All of those pages that are on the floor now, all those white pages, oh, there's a close-up of a box with another verb on it. All of those pages were ones that actually fell during the course of the installation. They were mounted in these dispenser boxes up here. And then I had a feeding machine that I designed that would push them out and let them fall to the ground. It was supposed to be one at a time. It needed a little technical help, so I often got groups of 7 or 8 or 15, whatever, but they would drift down because they were typing paper and fell really nicely from that tall ceiling. And then they would land on the floor. And you could walk around as the viewer and read all of the different verbs that were there. And here's an image where you see all sorts of ones spread out there. So present progressive verbs, running, dancing, lying, whatever sort of things there. And with all of this, I was looking at the changing relationship of the parts, that it was always a moving progression of the pieces falling. And at one notable instance, my daughter and a couple of friends were actually picking up pieces of paper and reading the verbs and then running around the gallery doing exactly that thing. And I think if I ever put this up again, I will make that an intentional thing that readers and viewers can take it and act it out. That was a great addition to it. But a movable in that the pieces fell and that also that the reader could move them around if they wanted to. Right. This book goes more back to the traditional book format, something you would recognize as a book. Leave the world of installation a little here. This is one that I based on a book from the 1950s called All by Herself, which is one of those books that you give to toddlers and preschoolers and little people who are learning to button their clothes and tie their clothes and do zippers and things like that so that they can practice and learn how to do the physical maneuvers of what it takes to zip and button and all of those sorts of things. The book from the 1950s was a little girl getting dressed by herself and learning to do all of those parts up. And in my day and age, there were also dolls that you could do that. I remember like an Ernie doll that had buttons and zips and things like that, so you could practice on his clothes. But this book from the 1950s was fairly gendered, let's put it kindly, and say that it was very clear what little girls were being buttoned into as a gender role. And the assumptions then went along with what it meant to be a girl. And there's also a lot of fasteners that are unique to girls and women's clothing. They're not on boys' clothing. And so it was an interesting look at that. And I looked at it and thought, gosh, we need to deconstruct that. So I took vintage clothes from the 1950s and 60s, vintage girls' clothes, and cut them apart and decided I would undo what had been done here. So kind of a traditional codex format done sort of as a stab kind of binding, but not with the more traditional Japanese look about it. But it did require a lot of stabbing to get through all of those pages. So each page features a verb, a doing, hook, and then an un something. So hook and unhook. And again, the vintage clothes over on the left. And you can see they're cut out from a garment, but then sewn into a particular square and with a little fastener there at the bottom. Tried to make the fastener at least visible, if not obvious, on all of them. This is the zip page. This is from a little girl's terry cloth bathrobe. This is from the tie page. I borrowed parts of that. So part of what is innate in this is that as you're going through this book as the reader, you become uncomfortably aware at some point that what you're doing and undoing is a little girl's clothes. And that was very intentional on my part, that the reader reach a level of discomfort with that and say, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Because it gets kind of creepy, and even me who made it finds it pretty creepy at some point. And the whole idea, like I talked about with Movables, about what is hidden and what is revealed, and all of a sudden you're like, get me out of here. I don't want to read this book anymore, but it has made its impression, and that was what I was after. All right. Now we're going to leave the realm of creepy conceptual art and go back to something a little bit more comfortable, which is yeah, this one is actually far from that. This is a book that I created, started about 5 years ago, and it took more than 3 years to make, though I did do other things in the meantime. This is a tribute book that I created for the director of dance at the Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. That's a big arts and cultural center here in a suburb of Denver. And Christina had been a dance teacher of my daughter for 15 years and also was approaching her 30th anniversary of teaching dance at the Arvada Center and directing all of these marvelous fairy tale ballets every year. And we wanted to honor her in some way. And I said, well, heck, I'll make a book. That's great. So we gathered tributes from dozens and dozens and dozens of her students and former students and parents and colleagues and people who had danced with her, and put them all into a book. One of the things about Christina is that she creates these magical shows on stage every spring, fairy tale ballets. And it wasn't going to be enough for me to make a regular book for her. I really wanted to do something that would be equally magical and equally delightful, and that you really, really, really wanted to look at. So what I ended up making for her was not just an average book, but a fairy tale castle. This one stands about 2.5 feet tall. The turret roof comes off. The wings pull off from the side, and there is a tower in the center that is covered with ivy that any fairy tale prince worth his salt ought to be able to climb. And the turreted roof comes off and you get to see what's inside. So just because you all are book people and interested in that sort of construction thing, this is how the wings attach to the mid tower there. There's a hinge pin that holds that in, and when you pull the hinge pin out, then you can remove the wings from the tower, and the tower stands alone. On the tower, the walls fold down. And again, this part is maybe about 2 feet tall. The walls fold down, and there are 8 walls altogether. 2 of the walls hold up the proscenium arch in the middle. And there's the stage and the scrim. That backdrop part actually pulls up and down. And the footlights on the front, which I installed. Christina comes from a family with a long tradition of theatrical dance. She's 4th generation dancer on stage. So acknowledging some of her parents' past in vaudeville and things like that. And so the walls then fold down. And if you can see along each one of those panels there, there's little doors, which then all open up. And inside those are the tributes to Christina, written again by parents and alumni and dancers who have known and loved her for a long time. You can see a little bit of one there as it's open. If you pull the scrim up backstage, this was one of the things that I wanted to do to honor her theatrical history. There are posters backstage there that are from her own theatrical background and from her parents and from her grandmother's dance troupe. I put them together from press releases I found for them and photographs that I found in the paper. And there you can see them a little bit more clearly, at least one section of them. Also showing off of those footlights that actually light up. On stage, there's a little liftable panel, almost like a trapdoor, that you can turn on and off the lights. And then back to this again, you can see how the lights light up on the tower too. The stars light up like any good fairy tale. With this, the roof lifts off, and inside is a ballet studio. The doors are covered with silver paper to look like mirrors. And then the walls are covered with that unique color that is ballet pink, and then ballet bars in the middle. And just like the ones in the theater, the walls of this fold down and the tributes are inside. Now with this, I got to present it to her in the middle of the pandemic after 3 years, 600 hours of working on this thing. And I'm like, well, gosh, I don't know what she's going to think, but it turned out it went pretty well. She was pretty moved by the whole thing and just amazed that we would do this for her. And most of this book is movable. Things lift off, things open up. It's like a playground in so many ways. And one of the tributes that I think for myself in making this, one of the tributes to movable books that made this so darn successful was that after this presentation here, we let people come up and look at it, and all of her teachers came and gathered around. And this was the pandemic, and we were all supposed to be 6 feet apart, but they could care less. They couldn't keep their hands off it. Oh, look here. Oh, open this. Oh, turn this on. Oh, look at this. Oh, see how this folds? And gosh, it was so amazing to watch people watch how engaged they were with this object that was a book, and how if we had just made a scrapbook, people would have cared about it for a little while, but they would not have been nearly so delighted by it. So committed to including something that moves as a way to engage people in what can be fun about books. So movables can be fun. Movables can help engage your audience anymore. Movables can be effective in moving your content toward the reader, and they can evoke things by the fact that they're moving. And pretty much they can move people too. Appreciate you all tuning in for that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Sean.
Super fun, super fun. So I want to address a slightly awkward thing, Heather, because I know we've talked a lot, and I know that you have a unique style of talking. And
Yes.
Sometimes there is a sigh that you create in your voice when you're talking. And you're going to see in the chat that people have been responding to that.
Okay.
So everybody, that's Heather. That's the beauty of Heather. So
yeah.
we're
My
good.
apologies
We're
for
all good.
being that way. Here I am.
We're all good.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Also, folks are super engaged in those books. Looking to see if anyone has thrown in any questions. Emily, have you seen something that we...
There aren't any questions that I've seen so far. Lots of comments about how wonderful it is, and now they're coming in kind of fast here. One comment that I thought was particularly pertinent is Heather's way of dealing with life is in her movement also. And I have one question, which Heather, are all of your books one of a kinds?
I do make editions, but they're pretty small. I think the biggest edition I have intended to do is an edition of 7, and that's the Riptides quilt that was at the beginning, and have 4 of those made, another 3 yet to come, but most of them are pretty small editions just because the processes that I use are not going to be quick and not going to be multiple more than that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it does seem like a lot of your construction methods and your concepts kind of lend themselves to one at a time, if not one of a kind assembly.
Well put, thank you.
We've got a question from Andrea. Hey, Andrea, can you explain how the wings of the castle book are attached to the tower and how they are removed?
Sure thing. So the wings of the castle are attached with those hinge pins that I showed along the side there. There are longer, let's see if I can get back to that for just a second. There are half a hinge built into each part of the, half on the tower and half on the wing itself. And the hinge pin holds it closed. I think I'm just going to stay with a verbal explanation because I'm struggling with getting it back on Zoom. But there's a hinge pin on either side of the studio, and then it pulls off so that the tower can be free to fold down. Super.
If you have any more, feel free to throw it in there. Otherwise, I'm going to slip right on and bring us over to Terry, our second presentation of the day, Terry Englehart. And Terry has a little bit more of an unusual story because she's new to the scene. Terry has done some greeting card design and some calligraphy in the past. Her career has been in a totally different direction, but she's now retired, and she decided during COVID that she needed something fun and engaging and dynamic and colorful. Those are my words, not Terry's words, but that's what you're going to find out when you see her stuff. And so I met Terry at the Denver conference as well. and she said she'd really love to share some of her work. So today's a chance. Terry is in Oakland. Terry has a presentation that she's going to screen share as well. And Terry, it's all yours.
All right. Is this coming up? There it is.
Good.
Okay. Well, yes, I am from Oakland. This weekend, I'm in Pennsylvania because I'm visiting family, including my two granddaughters who live here. Okay. I guess this is okay, the way it is now, right? I'm up. All right. We're sharing. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to just get into something. I had a different career 30 years ago. I had a lot of old paintings. What you're seeing on the screen is not a pop-up, but it is a pile of old paintings, some new things. I looked around, I got all my tubes of dried out watercolor, reconstituted them. Anyway, I just dove right in. Wanted to do something fun during this time. And so I looked at a bunch of paper art books that I had, became inspired by a lot of the artists, especially I would say Paul Johnson's whimsical, colorful pieces, just so exciting. And so one thing I wanted to do was use the stuff I had as much as possible, and then try something new. You can learn a lot, as you probably all know, on YouTube videos. And as many of the others of you probably have done, I found Duncan Birmingham's YouTube videos on how to make pop-ups. And there were others as well, but I think his was my primary teacher. I also got his books. And just sort of started. So let's see, I will show you some things that I have made. This is one of the first things. After, I did a whole bunch of things with Astro Bright cover stock, which I love the colors. And for this piece, I knew at the outset that I just wanted to do something maybe with layered, with layers, but I created it as I went along. I'm practicing the swirls and the spirals and the ladders and so on. And another thing that I've been doing is writing rhymes. I'm not even going to call them poetry, but they're kind of fun rhymes, oftentimes with nonsense words. And these I've incorporated into a number of the pieces as well. I'm going to read one or two, so you'll get to hear how they fit in. So that was kind of a very early one, a year and a half ago, maybe. This is using another old painting I didn't know what to do with. I had taken a class maybe 8 years ago, put an old 30-year-old painting into a sort of a book form. And then when I started doing the pop-up things, again, you can see that I love these spirals. I just, I made something else out of it. Whoops, I'm not, oh, there it is. Okay. This one is Jazzman, and I'm going to read you the poem that I wrote to go along with this. There are a lot of nonsense words in here, so please do not worry if you don't understand it, because it's not you, it's me making up words. In the Neblakash of Fond-Larone, the jazzman played his saxophone. His tune swirled amongst the colors wild, the lime garolled, the rose confiled. He blew his horn, an emerald rise, then tangerine to improvise. He rode the frame, cled up and down, a yellow strats derailed his sound. As deep the turquoise clater flew within the riff of music blue, a fengorama purple drayed, while sinterizing notes he played. And so again, that's two of my fun things going together. Here's another pretty whimsical one with some pretty silly made up words on it. This is The Wishing Tree, and it has another poem that I made up. Some of you may recognize this form. I saw I have one of David Carter books, 12 Bugs of Christmas, and at the back he has a tree. This not exactly like this, but the form, how to actually construct that tree. I did what many of you have done as well, is sort of take it apart a little bit and figure it out. And so I created this tree, wrote a poem out about wishes and making wishes, and I hung little beads on it with the stars. I thought it was fun to explore with that. I also have a whole bunch of beads, so I'm trying to use up some of those beads as well. Okay, let's see. Then here's another bead one. I have a couple of these with me, and I will open them and show you after I finish showing you the slides. That was just trying the beads out and using making the tree in a little bit of a different way. And I'm taking Helen Hebert's paper year, which is lots of fun. One of the projects that she introduced us to was the slice form, doing pop-ups with slice form, which I hadn't done. So I thought I experimented a bit with it, and I wanted to see how much stuff. This is as you can see, my garden made of Astro Bright cover stock. Wanted to see how many flowers I could actually cram into this garden, and it does fold flat. So you'll just have to imagine that, but I mean, it's full of flowers. They don't even get tangled up. And from that, here's this was sort of the next thing I did with that slice form. I created a vase out of an acetate. I don't remember the weight of it, but it was enough so that it could hold its form. So I made this slice form vase, and I cut apart a whole bunch of those colorful watercolors that you saw earlier and created the flowers on the stems and glued them to pieces of the acetate, creating this vase with flowers coming out. And it also does fold flat, and it doesn't get all tangled up. So it's just, as you can see, I wanted to just have fun, use a lot of color, and just really feel happy and good about what I was doing, and also to share it with my grandchildren. That was also a big motivation. This one's a little different. It's not so colorful, but it's also an old painting cut up. I also had a book, Paul Jackson's book. I don't remember the title of it, but a lot of these kinds of cuts that he makes into paper, a different form of pop-up. And I'll show you a close-up of that one. So I also did calligraphy. I don't do so much anymore, but in the past. And also in Helen's group, we were trying doing some things with stitching. So I took this old piece that I had made and ran the threads through it. And I kind of like that. So I might do more with that. This is the final one that I'm going to show you. And my current project is I'm taking fairy tales and kind of doing a sideways thing with them so that they're not exactly the way you may remember the fairy tales. I will read this one. I've done several, but and I know you can see the words, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. I hope you don't mind. This is Rapunzel's story. For centuries now, my hair had been long and straight as a stick, which just felt so wrong. Maybe some waves or a little more curl would bring me a handsome young knight or an earl. A permanent seemed like it might do the job and bring me a bow to make my heart throb. So with my new hairdo, I sought to entice a prince or a duke or someone as nice. I had no idea my coif would ensnare the man of my dreams in this unruly hair. Alas, my fair ringlets, no dates did they wangle, just caught them all up in a terrible tangle. So hair should be natural and do what it does, whether fine, coarse, or frizzy, no matter, because the one who will love you, whom destiny called, won't care if you're hairy all over or bald. So there's my work. I think I'm done, but I will go back up to the top, and I'm just going to open a few of the ones that I brought with me so that I'm not quite sure how to go up to. I'm going to just pop way up to the top this way. Shall I take that off and just because I just wanted to open a few of them? Well, I can do it this way. You can see. So
Terry?
I know,
Terry, if you stop the screen share, we'll be able to see better. Because
Okay.
at the moment, we see your screen more than we
yeah,
see.
that's not so good. Okay, so, all right. So again, I've just brought a few with me to Pennsylvania, but it's always fun to open them. So this is that one, that whimsical one with the one of the first ones I did with another sort of whimsical poem. And Jazzman, yeah, it's popping up. Yeah, maybe just a couple more. Oh, did I show you both fish? I can't remember. Well, you saw this fish, I think, right? Didn't I think that, unless I flipped through that slide, maybe I didn't do that one. And this one led to another fish. Whoops, I don't have a sturdy back on this one, but this fish, somehow I think this slide didn't come through when I was showing the slides. I don't remember. Anyway, so there's a whole bunch of fish crammed in there, kind of like it did the flower. This is not a slice form, but they pop back. And then the final one that I will show you in person here is the tree with the beads. So might try a little more with beads and stuff, because I love that movement, that extra movement that happens when that. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. And I am having fun. And I have my grandchildren are interested in learning how to do this. So, in about 20 years, there might be a few more paper engineers out there plying their craft.
Right.
Absolutely.
There are a few questions coming in. One of them has to do with scale. We got a little bit of a sense of the size of some of them when you were holding, but what's the base paper size roughly? Are they like full card sheets or?
Oh, well, these, I've done a whole bunch of different sizes. This one, for example, this is kind of a pretty typical size I've been using. And I would say it's, I don't really know, maybe 12 inches across when open by perhaps 8 or 10, probably 10. Yeah. I do have a few larger ones. That one with the purple tree was a bit big, and so I didn't bring it with me. I've done a whole bunch of small, cards for friends and so on that are regular card size. So
Right.
a whole bunch of those, which I'm not showing, but because I sent them to people.
Sure. And then from Pierre Fountain, we have do you hope to exhibit these pieces? Are they displayed in your home, or do you just dive in and create them and do whatever you're going to do with them?
Probably more the latter. Yeah, I just, I like to, my friends like to see them, but I'm not doing any sort of formal exhibit. No. I don't know. With the fairy tales, I do have a plan to create a book of some form, because I've got maybe 6 of those that I'd like to, they're just sort of a fun collection. And I think I will make some form of book out of those. Yes.
Yeah.
Haven't done it yet. And I don't know where that will go.
Okay. Well, and you're also getting lots of compliments in the chat as well, and different
Folks
ones.
love the color.
And the circle of fish is very popular.
Oh, good.
Fish.
Okay.
And I have to say, I'm really impressed with how many flowers you got into that slice form, because I've made slice forms and, it gets kind of tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Great.
worked. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah, folks love the beads, love the glass. Lots to look at there. Lots to look at there. Okay, we have now arrived at the moment in our program where we are going to have our first official Movable Book Society Zoom Town Hall meeting. And I think this is the way to do this. We, of course, we have nearly 100 people. We have 98 I'm seeing right now, which is great, And I sent some prompts, some questions in the email that I sent earlier this week. And I'm just going to run through those. And if you have something that you want to respond to, throw it in the chat. and we'll pull it out of the chat. We've got that wavy handy feature in there somewhere that I know people have used. I don't know if I've ever used it before, but give us a wavy handy moment, and we will conduct. And if we've got enough that we want to talk about, we'll run this for 30 minutes or so, and the make and take at the end is going to come together fast, so we'll have plenty of time for that. So I would like to begin with the topic of the conference, which we know now is going to be in Cleveland next year, same time as usual, there at that weekend that bridges September to October. And what I would love to hear from y'all first, yay Cleveland, is, do you have any nominations or suggestions for speakers or for topics at next year's conference? Go. I see people, I see Ellen looking off into space, and she's running through her dream list. As am I as well.
People do seem pleased about Cleveland.
Yeah.
Okay. And so one suggestion, this is from Kyra, is to make a card like Terry showed of the wishing tree. So that's a potential idea for the conference participatory activity. And Alicia Bailey has suggested a trip to the Morgan Paper Conservancy, which is in Cleveland, which is a teaching exhibit space in Cleveland. And I believe all these things are possibilities. And the Cleveland Public Library is also one of Alicia's special collections there. The Cleveland Museum of Art also has a collection. Not sure how strong it is in pop-ups, but I know they do have an artist book collection. And I now know someone who works at the Cleveland Museum who used to be here. So, see if I can apply that into something.
Shelley, thanks for suggesting Kelly Anderson. We actually had Kelly talk at our conference when we were in Boston a way back, and it was amazing. But yeah, we're always open for repeats. So good for the list.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure what I'm seeing on my screen, but
I'm not sure what.
There was a suggestion of having Anwar Floyd Pruitt at the conference, and I would certainly be happy to look into that. Anwar Floyd Pruitt, some of you may remember from a previous Zoom, he does a lot of things with paper puppets and sort of outreach activities and inclusivity things. He recently finished his MFA from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And so, and Kyra has put his website up, and so that would be possible. We did have Colette Fu speak recently, but she's always an interesting one to have present.
David Halcock would be lovely, Larry. Let's put him on the wish list for sure.
Yeah, Spellcheck is playing havoc with Bruce Foster, but he's trying to nominate Mecca Vandermeulen, and so we're gonna make lists. We're gonna keep this list. So
You betcha.
And somebody asked something about talking heads. I think we're just gonna conduct this through the chat. Yes.
Sure, though, if someone wants to talk out loud, yeah, we encourage it for sure. Yeah, just let us know. I kind of have it as a tangent question to talk about virtual options for the conference, but now is a perfect time to kind of stir that in. Vicki has added that to the list. Last year, of course, was the first time we did it, and it was a Zoom response, but in a number of ways, it was extraordinarily useful and successful. And we're definitely talking about running it that way again next year. So maybe for folks who know that they would attend virtually and not necessarily in person, what you might want to see as features in that virtual conference, that might be useful too. And it also kind of takes the lid off of who we can have come and talk to the conference, because virtual presenters can be anywhere. They can be anywhere. The conference is, let me look very specifically. Jumping over to my calendar. September 28th, 2023 through October 1st. We've booked a hotel. We're committed. It's happening. It's happening. John B., who said that last year the Zoom was great. What did you like about it, John?
Well, I couldn't travel last year, so I was just happy that I was able to attend my first conference. I didn't get to meet people in person, but I thought it was great to just see what was going on, and I'd love to go in person.
We're at least traveling in the right direction next year for John, who is in New Jersey. Okay. The conference was recorded, responding to Miss Amanda's question. And we decided that we didn't want to make the recordings available as a group, but we've shared chunks of the conference through a couple of Zoom events over the past couple of months, and plan to continue that. So ultimately, it's quite possible that everything will be viewable, but it's not something that you can just jump into and click on right now, unless you were a virtual participant last year, and of course you paid a registration fee, and then you've got access to the conference recording. Suggestion for AirMeet rather than Zoom. I'll have to explore that. Auction. That's an interesting point to bring up, Kyra, for sure, for sure, for sure. I'm going to stir in another topic question. This one jumping off of Bruce Foster, our newsletter editor, is here today. And he made the comment about maybe bringing Micah DeGrau along next year, who's working on an article for the newsletter right now for the next issue, I believe. Yes, Bruce?
Yeah, she's it's gonna be a great article. She's been interviewing a lot of the collectors and paper engineers in France, and spent a lot of time on it. I'm looking forward to sharing that with everyone.
Bruce, do a little sell, if you will, for folks to contribute articles for the newsletter.
Yes, please. I love getting new articles from people, and we've gotten a few since the last conference. But anybody who wants to share thoughts or topics with us all is extremely welcome to submit. We used to, I know that during the past of the newsletter that there were lots of people putting things in. Maybe and you know, the pandemic had some kind of a toll on some of that because of the shows and exhibitions had dropped off. But as things open back up again, people are going to Bologna or Frankfurt or anything like that. Please, you know, send us some of your impressions of what you've seen there. We have lots of room in the newsletter that we can share from issue to issue, and we would all love to hear from everyone. So please.
And I just said the wrong Micah. It's Micah Vandermeulen,
Yes.
not Micah de Grau or Micah Biederstadt. It's a popular name. It's a popular name with our European friends. Bruce, can you throw her name back into the chat, please? Sure. Also, while Bruce is typing and fighting spell check, he's also very open to hearing about your ideas for what, again, you would like to see and read about in future editions. And Bruce also
put me on the spot here.
Continue to make demands. Throw your editor email address in there, Bruce, so folks can contact you directly.
Sure. Editor@movablebooksociety.org.
Bruce, can I have you type it?
Sure thing.
So folks have it in front of them. Thank you. Every 3 months, those newsletters come out every 3 months. And if you are a subscriber to the society, but not a member, then you're not getting to see those newsletters. But if you would like to see the newsletters, all you have to do is become a member, and it's cheap. $46 if you live in the US, 60 if you live in outside of the US and Canada. So come join us. Come join us. How about this question from the list? We have a number of folks, and some of you are here as I'm pointing my virtual finger at you. I see you out there, who've been members for a good long time. And Nancy just got her Proposition Press Complexities of Pop-Up book, I'm assuming, that Emily is now holding up. Those just went out. Mine arrived yesterday. They're super great. They're still available. Buy your copy. Proposition Press. Kyra, please. Ellen's waving her hand. Ellen, you're muted.
Some people love me muted. I just wanted to say, while we were talking about the newsletter, because I write the pop-its and announce book shows, book fairs, and gallery openings and exhibits of all kinds, please let me know around the world when they are coming to pass so that I could announce it in the newsletter. And I gave my email, which is very simple, popups@popuplady.com.
Thank you, Ellen. Margaret, we are still way ahead of the conference, so we don't have anything up on the website yet. But when we do, which will most likely be December, early January, there will be a dedicated page on the website, and you'll see all the information on there. You'll see everything. Registrations up there, conference, hotel arrangements. You'll see it all there. it's still just a little early. All right, folks are ordering. Good, 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 good. What was I just about going to ask? Oh, right, collectors. So if you are an old school collector, early, like almost 30 years ago to this group collector, or a collector who just joined us last year, what do you want to know from your fellow collectors? Give me a hook to hang a collector ask on. That would be useful.
Didn't we have in the newsletter years ago where a collector would just put in a little blurb about a recent or a very positive acquisition, and then tap somebody for the next person to do it? So there was one in every newsletter. We continued that for a while, but then it disappeared.
That sounds fun. Bruce? That one's for you. Bruce, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I was answering a question. What was your question?
I was reminding everyone that years and years ago, the newsletter had a collector feature one acquisition, new, old, favorite, astounding, whatever it was, and then tap the next person. So I would say,
okay.
Here's my book. Kyra, what's your book next newsletter?
Okay. We can look into that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and kind of an amplification of that, Larry Seidman has suggested that people make their top 10 lists of the things in their collection. We could maybe even do that as a kind of a, just see if certain names keep popping up. And also, I mean, we could just have a general poll of what kinds of things people are collecting, whether they're collecting old pop-ups or a specific engineer, or only new pop-ups or subject matter. I mean, there's a lot of ways that people focus their collections. This would be a good forum for me to announce, though it'll be in the next newsletter for sure. December 1st, I'm mounting an exhibit at the Grow Your Club in New York City called, or working title is, Animated Advertising, 200 Years of Premiums, Promos, and Pop-Ups. And that will open on December 1st here in New York City. Everyone invited. Cool.
Sounds great.
Ellen has a lovely guest room.
Which my granddaughter has discovered. Coming from Delaware already, hitting the New York scene.
Kyra also asked, scroll back, to mention the MBS Artist Book Award. Kyra, are you simply asking me to talk about that right here, right now?
Yes. So that people, because I see Terry's work and what Heather was doing, and it's like, make sure you have something for the 2023 Artist Book Awards submission.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah.
So you can say that, Sean, instead of me just saying that. You can go ahead and say that.
Right. It's a contest that we run at the conference every 2 years. It's an award that we give out to the best artist book that's been submitted for the contest. We get a good number of submissions every year. We mentioned Paul Johnson a little earlier when we were talking about Terry's super saturated color, that Paul Johnson also works that way, and he was the winner in 2021 for that award. So just like all other things conference, that'll be up on the site in late December, early January. So you can apply and submit a piece.
And Ellen, would you put the dates of your exhibit in the chat, please? People are wanting to kind of keep track of that. Kyra has already posted a link to the Grolier Club, and I'm sure when it gets closer, info on the exhibit will get posted there as well, but it never hurts to have the dates ahead of time. So there's a question about when people create special pop-up books, about how the prices are determined. And there's no easy answer to that question. That's a, you know, it's like every artist trying to figure out how to price their work. Some of it is, you know, you can look at other people who are doing work that you think is similar to what you're doing to try and figure out your pricing, or you can just pluck a number out of the air and see if people gasp, and you know, or I mean, I kind of I always struggle with this, and I know some people who really keep track of hours and materials and quantify it that way. I make editions, limited editions, so it, you know, it's kind of a combination of a lot of things, and some of it is I kind of just guess. And which I know is not particularly helpful, but we discuss this all the time in the graduate program where I teach, of how to figure out your pricing. And I really think it does help sometimes to look at other people's work and other people's prices. You can look on the Vamp and Tramp website and see a lot of different artists, and get a sense of prices there. And do remember, if you sell through a dealer, you're going to give them 40%, and to kind of plan accordingly. Sometimes when you're just starting out, your prices might be a little lower, just so you can get people to buy them and put them in collections. And you know, it's a real seat of the pants figuring, but you know, it's something that gets discussed all the time, people trying to figure out prices.
Emily,
Yes.
Can I just mention, when I first got interested, or one of the that I remember being interested in Movable and pop-ups, I met you in Springfield at a book, an artist book conference, and you had like a $20 grab bag filled with things like, you know, little miniature books or flexagons.
Yep.
And you know, that was so wonderful. I still have it upstairs, the package with all the little things. And so something as affordable as that, and Ed Hutchins has things that are like affordable and accessible, up to somebody like a Paul Johnson, who might be several $100s for his pieces. But to come into and know that I have an Emily Martin.
Well, and you know, I go to book fairs. I just recently went to the Codex book fair. I shouldn't say I go to book fairs. I really only go to Codex, and sometimes I go to the New York Fine Press Book Fair. And you know, not everything there is a movable, but and there's other people on the chat that also do that as well. And it's nice sometimes to have a range of prices. You know, some of my books are really complicated, so they are by that nature going to be more expensive. But I had a little $20, it wasn't a movable, but I had a little $20 piece that was, you know, affordable. Got people to stop the table, you know, made them smile.
This might also be an interesting topic for group discussion, panel discussion, written for newsletter or in person for either Zoom or conference. So let's keep this in the mix. There was a question also about more workshop opportunities, things to do since pandemic, during and post pandemic. And I just threw into the chat a link that's developed by Jade Queck, who is part of the San Diego Book Arts community. It's comprehensive. It's exhaustive. She includes everything somehow she's got her eye on everything. So that link is there. It's that teamup.com that I sent. And right above that is Jade's email address. When she sends the monthly update for the calendar, she also just sends a laundry list of a ton of other stuff. It's an amazing resource. So I totally recommend grabbing that. We are now 2 minutes from bringing this to a close today. This has been spectacularly rich and useful for me, and I think for a couple of other folks as well. So we'll do this again. I did not even get through all of my questions. So maybe what we will do, in fact, is do a part 2 of this next month and address the rest of the questions. And thanks everyone for all of this great stuff. I'm going to compile it and I'm going to keep that list handy. Emily, are you making a gesture at me?
There was one last question. Somebody up here was asking about books that contain paper models and constructions that have to be built by the buyer. And I would say that that does not fall outside the focus of this group. It's a pretty eclectic group. And so that I would put that in our sphere. And I've been kind of watching the chat. We do save the chat. So all of these links are going to be kept so you can access them. I should say that Kyra saves the chat.
Right.
she saves our bacon in many ways. And
compiles it beautifully.
Yes.
Right.
So, and paper toys, a lot of things that readers, viewers interact with kind of all fall within the sphere of the Movable Book Society, I would say.
So you will all see, if you are all subscribers or members, then I will send an email. If not this Monday, then Monday after, and it's going to be access to this recording and also the compiled list that Kyra is going to put together for us. Good. Let's make a tulip, right? Can I have someone? I think Eleanor is asking. I'm not sure. Can I have someone who's got it together to drop that tulip pattern into the chat? Otherwise, I am going to highlight my desktop, if I can make it happen. And while I'm trying to do that.
Okay, Kyra has several people have posted the tulip.
Excellent.
So you should be able to access it if you. It's also, there's linked to it in the original email that we all received for the Zoom too, whichever way it's easiest for you to find it.
Emily, can you, quick tech issue, everybody. Can you go to my Sean's bench and see if you can make it, if you can spotlight it, or here, we'll just pin it. Let's just do it that way.
Yeah, can you do it that way?
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
And of course, you can't see anything right now, and now you can. All right, here's my desktop. Here's that tulip pattern right there.
You, Don.
What's that?
We're still seeing your own screen. We're not on your.
You need to spotlight yourself.
Yeah.
There we go.
There.
There we go.
Yep.
Was that Andrea? Thank you, Andrea.
It was Emiko, I think.
Emiko. Thank you, Emiko. Okay, here is the pattern that you will see, the PDF, when you downloaded it. And of course, I instructed to download and also cut and score. So if you're just working from this white sheet or whatever color you printed your pattern onto, that's great. What I did was I printed this onto text weight paper, and then I transferred all of those pattern pieces into color so that the model I'm building right now will look just like the color model that you saw in the email. You're going to have this PDF forever. Should you keep it, you're going to have this recording. So if right now you want to make a practice white version and then come back and make a fancy one later, or if you've got some color paper to work with, or if you want to do some hand coloring as we're working right now, all that is great. All that is great. You've got lots of options in front of you. In the meantime, I'm pulling these pieces into view. We have our 2 flower pieces, which for me are pink, magenta. I have 2 leaf pieces. I have a stem piece, all these pattern pieces that I'm going to keep handy because they'll help me remember what side is the front, and then our card piece. And we're going to start by grabbing these 2 flower pieces, and the pattern tells us that this center fold on this larger piece is a mountain because it's got that longer, broader dash line to it. So we're going to have that mountain fold up towards the front, and then valley folds, folds that recede, that are down off on the sides. On the smaller pink piece, it's just a valley fold right down the middle. We're going to link these 2 pieces together. And we have 2 slots in the larger piece, and we have closed slots, and we have open slots on the smaller pink piece. And basically these sections out on the side are tabs that we're going to use to lock the pieces together. So I'm just going to do a real quick little fold over. And I'll do that on both sides. And again, that valley fold is facing up, facing the front. And I'm going to slide these tabs into the slot, tabs on the left, slot on the left, back to front. And once I slide that whole section through, I'm going to unlock the tabs on the front, or open them up, and it locks those tabs in position. I'm going to do the same on the right side. Once you've got the tabs through and everything is open and locked, collapse your flower in half on the center folds just to make sure that it'll do it. Pop-ups pretty much always have to collapse flat. Let's make sure we can do it. I'm going to put that down on the table. I'm going to grab my 2 leaf pieces next. I'm going to pull out some glue. I'm using PVA today. Good, strong, flexible, permanent, fast setting glue. And we're going to glue the 2 leaf pieces together. And again, with the leaves, we know we're looking at the front of the leaves because that long center fold is a valley fold, a receding fold. And you'll see that with these 2 leaves sitting here, they're resting vertically. I've got the valley folds pointing up, and the leaf on the right is the one that's got that additional little mountain fold down here the lower left. I'm going to apply glue to that whole little wedge down there. And then I'm gonna flip over the leaf that's on the right. I'm gonna tuck under this little wedge that's got glue on it in a second, and then drop it over the top of the left leaf and line up the edges. So one is resting right on top of the other. Okay, so in real time, belly folds are up. My little wedge is down here on the lower left. You can see where the glue is going. Here's some glue on my finger. I've got that little wedge pushed over a little bit so that I can apply glue to the wedge and push it up against the fold without being super concerned about glue going past the fold. Because we don't want glue to go somewhere where it doesn't belong. It just makes things crazy. Flipping over this left leaf. Mountain side of the fold is showing. And then drop the right leaf over the top and line up the edges. Pretty carefully, pretty carefully. So there's how our two leaves join. You might have noticed on your card piece that there are two shadowy shapes printed on the left side. And these are glue positioning marks. We're going to give our attention to this top one first. And for me, because I printed it and then I transferred it to a second sheet, I also made some little poke marks through that shadow and onto the color stock underneath it so I can see where those glue guides are on this sheet. They're two little poke marks. You may or may not be able to see them through my camera. But either way, we're going to glue this little arcing tab that's on the lower left onto that top smaller shadowy glue guide. And as we do that, we're going to make sure that all of these folds of the flower, that point where they all come together in the center, is resting super precisely right on the center fold of the card. So here's some glue. Working with the fold on the left that I'm pinching between my fingers right now. I'll apply glue to the back of it. Again, I kind of have the tab folded over a little bit so it's easy to apply glue to the edge but not go beyond. And then drop it onto the card. Lining the tab over the glue guide, making sure that center where all the folds come together hits right at the fold in the card. Things will get crazy down here if we're not precise about that. Now I'm folding the bloom here in half, collapsing it along the center fold. It's now tucked into the edges of the card so it won't be sticking out and get banged up later. That's good. And we're going to use this technique that we call the natural sticking point to mount the second tab. So I'm folding that one over the second tab. So now I'm looking at the back of it. And I'll apply glue to that second tab, and then I'll just close the card and stick it on there. So bloom is collapsed in half. tab is folded back, so I'm looking at the back side. I'm applying glue. Close the card, sticking it to that second tab. We're basically going to follow that very same approach to mount the leaves into the card. I have this longer shadowy shape that's lower. This whole entire left side of the left leaf is going to mount to that glue guide. I have again transferred those positions to the card, so it'll be easy for me to see. Gluing up the back, dropping it into the card. I just saw a question slide through. If someone would like to read it to me. And I'll keep this train on the tracks.
Yeah, I was just asking about, I've never used glue before. I always use double-sided tape, and I wondered if that was, if it was recommended to use glue, if that was better. And there's two different school of thoughts in the chat at the moment, which is one, it requires more precision if you use double-sided tape, but then I think some of us are just used to using double-sided tape, and we hadn't really thought of using glue, so we never really thought of the advantages of glue. Anyway, that was it. Thank you.
Here's my double-sided tape right here. I use it all the time. I use it all the time. I love using double-sided tape. Yeah, and right now, I would probably use glue for this anyway, but it totally doesn't matter. As long as you're happy with how your tape works. And, you know, again, in the book arts world, folks have some concerns about conservation quality of tapes. And so using the tape that Talas, T-A-L-A-S, bookbinding supply company in New York, or something comparable, you know, that's really great. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, use the material that makes you happy, for sure. It does the job, and it lets you work with the materials the way you like. The first side of that leaf is mounted. I'm going to engage that first fold. I'm going to engage the second fold. I'm going to engage the third fold. And now the leaves are folded up and all stacked. That last section, that rightmost section of the leaves is now flipped over and on top. And I'm going to apply glue to that whole section. And then again, I'm going to close the card so that I can do natural sticking point. But as I do that, I need to tuck the bloom in between the leaves so that the leaf sticks completely to the card and it doesn't get stuck on the flower. So let me do that slow. Leaning over, I'm 1 minute over. We just have one more step after this, so we're going to be super close to time. And again, if folks need to zip away, it's all recorded, and that link will be available super soon. You can see I'm kind of just applying glue against the fold. I'm not being super concerned about spreading it all the way across that section of the leaf. So I'm all folded, I'm all stacked. I'm going to lift up this little edge of the leaf so that the flower drops between the leaves, and then close the card. Kind of some long folds that are stacked up in there. They're holding some tension. You might need a couple extra seconds of setup time, depending on how much adhesive you used and what kind of adhesive you're using. That worked pretty well for me. Our very last step then is simply take that stem piece and tuck that into a stem-like place so that it connects leaves to bloom. You can kind of play with the angle in there however you like. It's not gonna impact the structure of the thing, so you can play with that a little if you like. We need to do a quick gallery moment before we all say goodbye. We also are going to give a quick moment of some special attention to my friend John, who has taken a number of workshops with me, and frequently I give him patterns in white and he watercolor paints them, and then he builds pop-ups during my workshops that are based on his watercolors, and they're fantastic. So, John, are you ready?
Yep.
Here's John's tulip. It looks great.
That looks fabulous.
Looks great. I'm going to remove John's spotlight, and now let's all go to gallery view and hold up your tulips, everybody. Let me see what you did. Let me see how things look. Sharon's got a nice purple. Looks good. Looks good. Let me scroll over. We've got lots of pages here. Rebecca's got a two-tone thing going on with her flower. That's lovely. Oh, wait, holy cow, Miss Amanda. Your tulip's riding a horse. That's amazing. That looks great. That looks great. Beth's got a nice pink. Angie's got a lovely turquoise blue back behind her bloom. That's nice. And now we get to page 3, and we're in the land of folks who don't have their video on, which is totally fine. Great. These look great. These look great. A quick little shameless moment of self-promotion. You know, I do this all the time. I teach workshops and I have lots of patterns. Come visit my website, SeanSheehy.com, if you want to, and get a little bit more of the goodness of pop-up stuff that I make and share with other people. Emily, anything more before we say goodbye?
No. Thank you all for coming, and as soon as I can manage it, I will get this edited. I think we've had a pretty clean presentation this time, so shouldn't be too involved, and it will be posted to YouTube. We usually pull out the make and take as a little separate thing, so if you want to do it again with instruction, that'll be up there on its own as well. And this is my attempt to have clean editing.